Thank you for tuning in to the Mortal Kombat Online website and or YouTube channel. My name is Justin Deering. Welcome to the first and possibly the only video podcast we'll be doing. The topic today is mini-games and alternate game modes for the Mortal Kombat series, including the upcoming Mortal Kombat 9. This came about because Ed Boon had posted on his Twitter the other day that it's really about time that they release more information about other game modes, and that there's so much cool stuff they haven't talked about yet. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be looking at the mini-games and the alternate game modes that the Mortal Kombat games have done in the past, and speculate on what they'll be likely to do in the future. The first mini-game, the true instance of a game within a game, was Pong. Featured in Mortal Kombat 2, players would actually have to fight 250 battles in a row in order to get it to come up. In Mortal Kombat 3, there was another game, Galaga, that you could access via a combat code.
That was pathetic.
The home systems would make this even easier to access by having players enter a code to pull up a secret menu.
Round one. Don't make me.
The Super Nintendo port, believe it or not, would prove to have the superior version of this game, because when it was over, a stats screen would come up, showing you how many shots were fired, how many targets were hit, and your accuracy. In Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, the arcades added a Lost Treasures of Shao Kahn screen as a way for players to choose their reward for beating the game, making accessing Galaga even easier. When Mortal Kombat Trilogy was released for home systems, Galaga returned, and the Nintendo 64 port would actually go a step further, throwing in not only Pong from MK2, but also a Space Invaders clone, Invaders from Space. This is a somewhat frustrating version of the classic Space Invaders game.
That was pathetic.
Mortal Kombat 3 on the Super Nintendo also featured a slots game. The reward for matching up 3 of a kind was to get a combat code. This might not seem too useful, but I'm sure it came in handy for people with no internet access and for people with no strategy guides or magazines laying around.
Outstanding.
Mortal Kombat Deception introduced us to Puzzle Combat, a violent and bloody version of basically Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. And who can forget Motor Kombat, introduced to us in Mortal Kombat Armageddon? This was like a violent and bloody version of Super Mario Kart, featuring, of course, the level of gore that the Mortal Kombat audience has come to expect. Of course, the first true diversion from the fighting was right there from the beginning with Mortal Kombat 1. I'm talking, of course, about
Test your might.
If you ever hear anyone say that Mortal Kombat is just a button masher, well, when it comes to test your might, they're absolutely right. In order to pass this test, you have to press the attack buttons as fast as you can to build up your power meter. Then, do a karate chop once the bar is high enough. Side note, on the Super Nintendo port, it's virtually impossible to pass the later levels without cheating and using some kind of turbo controller. Guess which one is being played with a standard controller and which one's being played with the turbo controller. Test Your Might is unique in the sense that it was actually incorporated into the gameplay in the later games. In Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks, you would have to build up power the same way for a variety of reasons, such as to release water to put out fires, to introduce spikes with which to impale your opponent on, and it was also useful in several of the boss battles. In Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe, Test Your Might was used by both players to add or reduce damage as they fought their way through the buildings. Another Test Your game that was added was Test Your Sight. You'd have to guess which goblet was loaded with the symbol.
Test your sight. You chose wisely.
Fun fact, the Game Boy Advance port added an additional challenge by having the cup move a lot farther in just one turn.
You chose unwisely.
Mortal Kombat 4 introduced players to a practice mode, which was a good way to give the player a chance to practice special moves and combos. The on-screen indicator would show you which buttons were pressed, which was a start, although some of these combos required precision timing, and knowing which buttons were pressed wasn't always enough. Deadly Alliance featured a Conquest mode, which started out as basically a training mode for the player to learn the basic moves and special moves, although this was combined with elements of a story.
Well done. It is time, young warrior, for you to begin your worldly training. I have taught you much, but through your travels, you will attain a greater perspective. Remember my words, for they will guide you to your destiny.
In the next two games, Deception and Armageddon, Conquest mode was really expanded upon. While still training the player in the ways of combat, it became so much more than that. It kind of morphed into an adventure/RPG by allowing gamers to be introduced to the new protagonist, but also revealing the storyline, giving you a chance to explore the realms in the Mortal Kombat universe, and interact with different characters and factions like
The White Lotus serves many purposes, but paramount among them is the defense of Earthrealm from outside invaders.
and the Lin Kuei. And throwing out cool boss battles like the giant Shao Kahn statue. Kombat vs. DC Universe, players were introduced to a new kind of story mode. This would just feature cinematic sequences that would lead directly into a fight. The format for the story mode was that it would follow one character and give each one their own chapter. This is basically the same format that will be used for Mortal Kombat 9. There have also been variations on the one-on-one fighting mode. Back in the beginning, we were introduced to endurance rounds, which consisted of the player going up against two fighters back-to-back, while you only had the one energy bar. Once you defeated your first opponent, the second would immediately jump at you, with the first person either still laying there dead, or they burst into flames or exploded into blood and guts, depending upon which system you were playing on. The upcoming Mortal Kombat is going to feature a tag team mode, and as you can see from this video, one of the losers falls into the dead pool once they're defeated. What's exciting about this is that this is the first Mortal Kombat game to actually have a tag team mode.
Tag team isn't new to fighting games, but this is the first Mortal Kombat game that's had tag team.
Oh, well, yeah, there's that. I mean, that doesn't really count. Game Boy Advance, who really knows about that? By the way, on some of the home systems, they really got carried away with the endurance rounds. They started adding 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 8-on-8, 9-on-9. There was all kinds of endurance. One thing the Mortal Kombat team is known for doing is taking unused ideas from the past and figuring out ways to put those ideas into the next Mortal Kombat game. In fact, at one point, Ed Boon had talked about doing a possible bonus game where you would try and take a swing at a bunch of ninjas jumping at you, invoking the feeling of an old kung fu movie. It's certainly possible that the Mortal Kombat team could go back to that concept in trying to figure out what kind of bonus stage to do for the next Mortal Kombat game. So what kind of other game modes would you like to see? Drop us a comment on YouTube or on our website, www.mortalkombatonline.com.